Hello, everybody. This is Josh and Jesse. We are with Get Set Coach. We're going to take a 360 look into the interview process today. I'm going to talk about interview prep, and later on, Jesse will talk to you about what goes on behind the scenes with HR. So, why don't we dive in? Part of the interview process that's very critical is your strategic planning. You want to make sure that you're researching the company, you want to make sure that you're reviewing the job description, and you want to make sure that you're reviewing your resume. You also want to make sure that you may look through the LinkedIn profile of the person you're interviewing with, so you could kind of have a little bit of background because they have your resume, so you could also look and see what they did and maybe formulate some questions and learn about your employer. You also want to make sure in the strategic planning process that for an in-person interview, you're preparing your attire. You also want to make sure that you are surveying your commute. So that way you can arrive at your destination about 20 to 15 minutes before the interview. And in order to do that, if you have to commute to the interviewer, you could do a few things. You could use Google Street View, so you could survey where the location is, and you can make any of your mass transit connections in case that's something that occurs wherever you may be. For the ladies, it's recommended that for an interview, you consider wearing pantsuits. You are well groomed. You limit your jewelry accessories. You carry a portfolio. Those are always good in case you have to show an employer some samples, that work samples that you may have. Or if you want to carry some notes, so when you arrive early, you can go through some notes that you may have. You also want to if you have a lot of body art and body piercings, you might want to try to conceal them for your prior to your interview. For the men, it's customary to wear a suit, blue, gray. Those are proper styles. You also want to be well groomed, and you want to also, if you have a portfolio, you could bring that so you could have your notes as well, and also so you could show your samples. I know that the image does not show a portfolio there, but for the men, you also want to try to conceal your body art and your piercings for your prior to your interview.
Joshua,
Mhm.
do you think this applies to all kind of position?
I don't think it applies to every position, but the societal norms and the organizational culture might dictate um, um, that you might have a more casual looking appearance that's appropriate. So yeah, it really is based on the industry, based on the culture, um, how you know how appearance is how appearance is presented to an employer.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I do agree with you.
Hmm. And so when we're talking about interviewing, uh, it's important that you turn off your phones. You want to make sure all your devices are turned off. So even if you're bringing a tablet or laptop, you want to turn them off. Make sure they're not making any disruption. You want to have an open and confident body language. You want to avoid interrupting the interviewer. Frequently connect your past work experiences. That'll help you excel. Part of that comes from reviewing your own resume. You want to be very enthusiastic and confident for the position that you are applying for. And that is very important to have that mindset. You want to also ask the questions to the interviewer when you're in that part of the interview where the interviewer might ask, do you have any questions for us? This phase of the interview is actually very important. Just as much as the interviewer is learning about you in that Q&A, in the opening Q&A, you want to learn about their company. You want to learn about the role. You want to learn about who they are and what they did. And you want to know what makes that company a very special place to work for. And when you're done with that part of the interview, it's a good idea to also ask, what are the next steps in the interview process to your employer? So that way you have an idea of maybe how large the candidate pool is, or how long they will take to make a decision. I like to use the metaphor, a toolbox, when it comes to how to help you get through an interview. Part of the interview is engaging with the employer. So using small talk can be light small talk can be very warm and welcoming to the interview. You want to also, based on where you live, if it's customary to use handshakes, they're still used in the business world. You want one other tool you have available to you is to pause and compose your thoughts. And the way to do that is to say to the interviewer, if you don't mind, let me take can I take a moment to think about that? That will give you a chance for you to think about the question that was asked. Another tool you have is also to ask the interviewer to repeat themselves. That's good for long questions, and it's also good for questions that are asked to you where you don't know the word and you might want to hear it a different way. So you could use it in two ways. You could use it to either hear the question again so you could understand it, or you could use it to compose your thought. You also want to ask some follow-up questions because that can break up a tennis match Q&A. And what a tennis match Q&A is when the interviewer is asking a question and you are responding to them with the answer. And you're going back and forth, back and forth. So if you're asking a follow-up question at the end of your answer, you're turning the tables on them and you're breaking up that type of tennis match Q&A. You also want to have a positive, clear-headed, and happy approach, because nonverbal communication in an in-person interview is always present. So that will come across very well. You'll be well received. And then there are other tools to help you through some difficult questions.
Joshua, by the way, maybe it would be a good idea to elaborate a little bit about what do you mean about nonverbal communication is in play, like an open language body. So what exactly do you mean? If you can give them some tips for them to have an idea.
Yeah, so I could demonstrate a little bit. So closed body communication is when you're closing your arms. That's closing off your communication to the other person. Another one is sitting back in your chair. So what you want to do in an interview is you want to sit forward, and you want to keep your hands as free or on your lap as much as possible, because that brings the person into that warmly brings the person into what you have to say, and it comes across in a positive manner as well. So does eye contact. Eye contact comes across comes across the same way. So for difficult questions, you have a few tools. You have car, par, sure, and star. Car, par are great because those are 3 steps. SOAR and STAR are 4. So I always recommend to the client that if you want to go for if you want to excel in an interview and you want everything to be short and simple, you use CAR and PAR. So how this works is if you get the question, what was a failure and how did you overcome that obstacle? What was a failure experience and how did you overcome that obstacle? You could use these to help guide you through your answer. You could say, well, this was the challenge I faced, and state the challenge. This was the action I took, and then you state the action. As a result, this is what I learned from that experience, and this is how I'm overcoming that obstacle. So CAR can be used. CAR and PAR can be used in the same to help you simply get through a lot of difficult questions. That's what the failure question is one, but you will get a number of them. And the more confident and more experience you get, you might want to also start practicing with using SOAR and STAR. To help you with to help you excel at an interview question, to excel at an interview question, sharpen up your talking points, you can consider using your camera app on your smartphone. You can record your answer. You can record yourself and your response. Play it back. Listen to it. If you like it, move on. If not, do that 3 or 4 times. Self-coach yourself. That's a way to do independent work and prepare for your interview.
Or they just can reach to our Get Set coaches for help and coaching. They can go through with them with all those steps you're mentioning, one by one.
Absolutely, they definitely can, for sure. So I'm gonna hand it off to my teammate Jessy, and she'll tell you more about the HR process.
So, being an HR professional now for more than 12 years, I know that one of the most confusing and frustrating parts of the job search is what happens after the job interview, or even after you submit your application when you first apply for the job. So you did your part, but you have no control over what the employer is doing or how much time they are taking to get back to you. So what is really happening here? I will share with you some useful information about the employer side of the process to keep yourself from going totally buggy while waiting to hear back. So along the way, after each interview, members of the hiring team are usually sharing information, comparing notes, and challenging each other if they have different opinions before taking a final decision. But before they let anyone know they went to meet with them again, it could take weeks to find an interview slot. And while this is going on, often people who were not selected don't get notified at all. Only the ones moving on usually get contacted. In some cases, just a bad hiring process. In other cases, the human resources department requires silence until more is known. So you see, guys, some position, there are involved many members of the team. So the decision, it's not based on one person. And when this happens, some different opinion might happen. And so the team, they have to sit together, they have to challenge each other, and eventually they have to come with a common decision before selecting the proper candidate for the position. And this process usually takes time. And sometimes HR controls all communication, and that means people you write to are advised not to respond to the individual candidates. And why is that? Because usually HR don't share information with others along the process. So sometimes you know someone in the company, or you have a friend there, you try to reach out for feedback, but you don't have a feedback. And that's true, because usually as HR, we prefer to keep the feedback to ourselves, because we want to make sure that the candidate is having a very professional feedback. So that's why we prefer HR to handle this task. And some projects sometimes may suddenly have been put on a top priority list that's taking all their time. Even if they said they want to hire quickly, the hiring process can get put on the back burner. In other cases, the department is going through a reorganization. I've seen this many, many times. And sometimes the job is being just rethought and possibly needs to wait for management to approve a reclassification. And why this happens? Because sometimes they find a specific candidate whose skills are even more suited to their needs, or they find two people they like and decide to split the job into two different positions. So you see sometimes companies are searching for like an accountant, and then they meet someone that is more qualified than just an accountant, and they feel they don't want to lose this candidate, so they try to reclassify the position or work around it to find something that fit actually the candidate.
Jessy?
And yes.
So as a coach, how would you help the client that's in the waiting game when they're reaching out to us for coaching?
Well, actually, for them, if they learned about all the steps in the interview, if they were really prepared and they went to an interview, I think they did the best they can do. I do believe in that. And for them, it's just to believe in themselves and to believe in the process and give the process some time. Because in companies, many things that might happen. These are only few points I'm mentioning here. There's a lot more than these points that might happen. But meanwhile, they can always search for another job. Just don't wait and dwell on what's happening and why they didn't call me yet or something like that. And just believe in the process, believe in yourself, and keep on doing what you can do about it. Searching for different jobs. So the last 2 points actually that I want to and these are the 2 points that actually take more time than others. One is the checking references. After the in-person interview, employers often take the time to call a candidate's professional reference to verify work history and level of professionalism. Trying to get a hold of references can prolong the hiring decision-making process. And also there's another thing, it is the background checks. The majority of employers conduct background checks on candidates before they hire them. Background checks may involve everything from credit checks to drug screening to criminal record checking. Depending on how extensive the background check is, it could take anywhere from several days to a few weeks. So now I will go back to what I was telling you, Joshua. So if they feel they're stuck in the waiting game, they should not try to caught up worrying about things they cannot control, like all the stuff behind closed doors. Instead, they have to know that they've done their best and to make sure definitely that they send a great thank you note after the interview. And if after a couple of weeks have passed, it's not wrong to follow up with a polite email, just to make sure they inform the company that they are still interested and would love to know their status. Other than that, just wait as long as it takes. Meanwhile, they have to keep themselves busy to be diverted and not to be obsessed about the wait. Also, they can, as I said before, they just have to keep looking. Not only the action help them stay sane, but they actually will wind up finding an even better job in the process. So that's my part. And just believe in yourself. Believe in yourself.
Yeah. We definitely want to thank you for viewing our presentation today.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, make sure you go to Get Set Coach and schedule a session with us. We'll be delighted to help you.